Welcome back everyone to Min 540, Ministry and Culture, module number 2. Hope you had a great first week. Before we get started, just a couple of announcements by way of reminder for your discussion forum posts, the initial posts. Let's try to make sure that we have those submitted on Thursday or Friday at the latest so that other people in the class have the weekend to respond and interact with one another. A lot of times if everyone is waiting until late in the weekend to post, it's really hard to generate the kind of conversations that we want people to be able to have on those discussion boards. So make sure to get those initial posts in before we get to the weekend of class. Related to that is an announcement or a transition that we're going to be doing here in the course of this class. For most of you who have been in cohort 1, we have had Sunday night be our due date for all work to be completed. And we've had conversations with professors and students during the first few classes that we've run, and we've come to the conclusion that it would be better and more consistent with everything that we do at Grace Bible College for those classes to have their due dates, for our grad classes to have their due dates on Monday night at midnight. So you have an extra day. If things aren't finished for you here for Module 1, you still have today, Monday, to complete those. And then on into the future, you won't need to feel the pressure of having to work, and finish everything on Sunday. I know many of you have ministry responsibilities, and it just becomes very much of a burden to try to think about completing everything on Sunday. So from here on, we will have Monday to prepare that work and submit it by 11:59 p.m. on Monday night. So again, work will be due on Monday night from here on in this point. And if you still feel like you were cheated out of Module 1, Week 1, you submitted things and they could have been better if you had Monday to work on them, then just send me a quick note on email and let me know, and we'll make sure that you are able to turn in your best work for Week 1. Okay, now let's talk about Week 2, Module 2 for Min 540. Hope you're enjoying your reading. Hope you're enjoying the reading of James Davidson Hunter, who's presenting us with some interesting challenges regarding our view of how Christians engage the wider culture. And so we'll be into part 2 of Hunter this week. In fact, we will be looking at his essay number 2, where he is going to talk about cultural power. And that'll be our first discussion for the week. Will be Hunter and his essay number 2. And the question of why is it that Christians, whether liberal or conservative or in the peace churches, the left, the right, the middle, those standing outside the political spectrum, why is it that Christians have not been able to gain traction or achieve the kind of cultural change that they hope to do, with some notable exceptions that we could count into the mix? So be paying attention for that question of cultural power and why that is. Why is it that Christians have not been able to gain that traction? Second, we'll be looking at James K.A. Smith, specifically his practices audit from Desiring the Kingdom. And this practices audit is found on page 84 of Smith's Desiring the Kingdom, this book that you'll be reading, where he's going to ask you some very thought-provoking, profound questions about what are the things I actually do in the course of a day, in the course of a given week, in the course of a month or a year. What are the things that I actually do that shape my behavior in the world? And in turn, those things that I'm doing, often subconsciously without even realizing it, they shape what I believe about the world. So for example, every week, sometimes more often than once a week, I'll take my family to the grocery store. What does that assume about the way the world is? What does that assume about the way the world ought to be? I'm using some of Van Hooser's questions here. What does that assume about this cultural text of the grocery store, or maybe as Smith would put it, the cultural practice or the liturgy of going to the grocery store? Well, it assumes a number of things. It assumes that food will be available. It assumes that I'll have money in the bank to go get food. It assumes a certain some certain things about the kinds of food that I'm going to buy. So there are all kinds of factors that when we apply critical thinking to the things that we do every day, they become more complex than we had initially imagined or we take for granted. So that will be Smith's point in the first part of Desiring the Kingdom. And he really wants to think about, point out for us, he really wants to point out for us that we are lovers first and thinkers second, that we are participating in the world and we're being in the world before we really think discursively or rationally about what it is that we're doing. All right, so that'll be our second discussion. So those will be our discussion forums for module number 2. And again, make sure you get those completed by Thursday or Friday at the latest so that others in the class have a chance to respond to the content that you're building there. Third, we're going to look at an essay of Vanhoozer, and you will choose one essay from Vanhoozer's chapters 2 through 6. So you don't have to read all of those chapters, although they're all interesting. You only have to engage with your essay with one of those chapters. And you will look at the particular cultural text that's being evaluated there by the author in the Vanhoozer text. So you will be able to choose from a lot of really fun, I think, cultural texts, including the checkout line of the grocery store, the music of Eminem. Some of you will really appreciate the chance to engage the megachurch culture, critiques of the megachurch and what the megachurch means in society. You will be able to look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, if that's more up your alley. Or if you like movies, the last essay is on the Ridley Scott film Gladiator, Academy Award-winning film that teaches us a lot about what it means to be in society, to be warriors, to be violent, and a lot of things that we take for granted as we watch a film like Gladiator. So we have a whole spectrum, a whole range of cultural texts to choose from. And what you'll be doing is looking at the cultural text, you'll be looking at the evaluation that happens in that essay, and then you'll be doing some critical thinking and analysis of your own as you evaluate the evaluation of that essay. And all of that is in preparation for you to choose your own cultural text, which is our next assignment, is you are going to select your own cultural text. Follow the instructions that are there on Blackboard in the module, and you are going to find your own cultural text that you will eventually evaluate. The guidelines for that cultural text are there in Blackboard under syllabus and course information. I will put a link to the lectures and supplementals there as well, so that you can link to that more easily. And there's a lot of instruction there. There's 2 or 3 pages of why cultural text, what is a cultural text, how do I choose one that's not too big, that's not too small, that's going to be just the right size for this assignment. So follow those instructions and then post your selection of that text along with a preliminary bibliography and outline. I think that's for Module 1, but check the instructions there and you will, Module 2, check those instructions and you'll find exactly what to do there. And then last, we'll do our weekly reflection. And this is a chance for you to go back over the work that you've done in the previous 2 weeks, Module 1 and Module 2, and revisit that whole H. Richard Niebuhr Christ and Culture question. We never really had a chance to sum up after Hunter's critiques and after Smith's critiques, and after we've had a little space to think about cultural texts and our own participation in culture. We're going to come back to the question of Christ and culture, and what do I really land on that? So that is your chance to reflect on that question one more time before we get into kind of the tall grass, the thick weeds of alternative models of engagement and specific practices of cultural engagement as we get into weeks 3 and 4. So that's week 2. That's what you'll be up to. Feel free to send me a call or a note, email, text, whatever you need to do to get in touch with me if you have questions or need clarification. But I'll look forward to seeing you on the discussion boards. Thanks, everybody.